delicious Firehouse sub. Smells amazing in here. Again, we got t-shirts, got koozies, got Fireflies tickets out here if you want them as well, as we're going to be out here until noon. We'll get back in the baseball conversation coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. We'll talk to Jack, who's, of course, out there in Hoover. I'm probably sure he ate plenty of ice cream sandwiches last night for that 4-hour game against LSU, but get his thoughts on the Kentucky matchup and everything else going on this weekend out there in Hoover. But want to jump into football conversation now. We've talked a little bit about, what Beamer had to say at the welcome home event the other night that Wes was out there in Myrtle Beach for. Haven't dove into everything that he did get to talk about, though. I want to start off with this. Talked about the wide receiver room a little bit, and obviously Jared Brown coming from Coastal, a lot of local interest there with him transferring in South Carolina. We, of course, talked to him a couple weeks ago on the Garden Trust Hour, but here's Beamer. It's about a minute long, talking about the wide receiver room and giving his assessment post-spring of what he's seen out of those guys.
Amari and Jared both. Obviously, Amari being a local guy, and then Jared, who was extremely productive here at Coastal with Coach Beck and Coach Chadwell. Excited about their additions to our program. Obviously we lose a really, really talented and productive receiver in Xavier Leggett, and I'm eager to see just how that receiver room competition shakes itself out. Because I said it last week, and it's the truth. If somebody asked me who are going to be your top 6 receivers, I don't know, and that's a good thing in that I think we're balanced. They all complement each other well. We got some guys with some different skill sets. It's going to be great competition in there to try to figure out who's going to be in that rotation. But those are 2 guys, Amari and Jared both, that have a really good skill set for the position, that flashed during spring practice. And now they've gone through spring practice, and then this summer is going to be really big for them as they take another step as we head into preseason practice in August.
And that's kind of one of those things that we've heard him talk a lot about as the spring has gone along, where we don't really know what exactly that room's going to shake out to look like. It's almost kind of a good problem to have, where you've had so much talent, experienced talent at that come in via the transfer portal. Obviously, you got some highly touted freshmen coming in with Gatling and Mazio Bennett, where you're going to have a good core of wide receivers. You just don't know exactly how those reps are going to be divvied up just yet.
Yeah, you hope you're going to have a good core. I think you look at it and I go back to 2 thoughts. One being when we had Dow Loggins on Pro Day, and he sort of likened it to like the idea of Moneyball and baseball. Like, you're not going to replace Leggett with just one guy. And this time last year, we weren't talking about Leggett being Leggett. So is there always a chance that guy emerges? I mean, watching South Carolina receivers for years, they almost always have had that top receiver, when the opportunity presents itself, emerge and become a guy. Like, who is that? We'll find out. Could that late addition of Delvon Campbell, who I think was severely hampered by quarterback play at his previous stop, does that end up being your kind of top receiver? Even then, it's hard to imagine, although possible, just not likely. It's hard to imagine a first-round pick emerging from this group. But could you have it to where you feel better about your 3 guys than you did last year? And then could you have it where you feel better about your top 6 than you did last year? I think that is certainly possible. Some of that, I think this is going to be a huge summer for all those guys, the player run practices, the walkthroughs, getting out there with Lenoris Sellers, getting those reps, and kind of getting that rapport down for a receiver core that's very new, especially the guys who were not here for spring. And so I'm curious to see how it plays out. Chris, I think within some degree of accuracy, you can maybe predict some starters for the most part throughout the roster. Maybe there's some surprises where you miss, but I look at receiver, and you could really probably throw multiple different scenarios out there that are all equally likely.
Yeah, there's not going to be an alpha like Xavier Leggett this year. I don't think there's going to be someone who leads the Gamecocks in receptions. And I think there's going to be, maybe some semblance of that top guy, although I think it won't be as top heavy this year. But the big issue last year was not the lack of a number 1 receiver. It was the lack of depth at receiver. It was the lack of proven options aside from Xavier Leggett or when Xavier Legette wasn't on the field, right? I mean, we always go back to the example of in the Clemson game when Legette wasn't on the field. You just looked around against a really good Clemson defense and you say, I don't know if Clemson's that threatened overall by the receiver core. So what you've done this year is, you don't maybe have that number one you can identify, but I don't think there's any doubt 1 through 6, they've built more depth, right? Like they've built some experience and some guys that have caught some balls. Like you look at, Gage Larvinanen caught 42 balls last year. He caught 59 in 2022. So he caught 42. Delvon Campbell caught 31 in a bad offense. Mari Huggins-Bruce caught 20. He actually had an even better year in 2022. And Jared Brown caught 58 balls last year. And all these guys, they did that last season. Yes, at different schools, some cases at smaller schools. But they've all played 2, 3, 4 years of college football. So they have experience and they have some proven production on the field. Last year, South Carolina didn't really have that, whether it was at South Carolina or another school. Not even Xavier Legette had that. So I think you've built up more depth there. And it may be more by committee, but I think they've got to feel better about this room overall, even not having Xavier in the room.
And, obviously the person everybody's going to talk about a lot is Nick Harbor going into a second year now. Of course, he's been tied up with track stuff through the spring. He's been out of practice, been involved with the wide receiver room and stuff like that, but has not been partaking in things like the other guys have up to this point. And given his recent performances, you might not have him for a little bit longer if he continues to perform the way that he does, as we are getting closer and closer to the Olympics. He's not hit those Olympic qualifying times just yet. There's still an opportunity there where maybe you're not getting him back till maybe August at the earliest.
Yeah, and I wish I had more track knowledge. I'm a little bit ignorant on just what's even realistic as far as continuing to improve those times. And then even if you can make it to where, I think there are multiple other steps, like even once you hit that qualification to actually getting to the point of going to the Olympics and competing. Like, is that realistic? I don't know. Again, I'm ignorant on that, but obviously, and I've said this many times, but when you signed Nick Harbor, a huge part of it was, hey, we know how important track is to you, and we know how talented and special and rare you are to be able to run like that at that size. So if you're South Carolina, you have to support that for him, and they have. I just think it doesn't do any good to get frustrated about the football side, because this was part of the equation when he was recruited, part of the equation when he was signed. Would you love to get a lot of football reps this summer? Obviously, yes. And I think, if he doesn't make the Olympics, if he doesn't go that route, because of the lack of reps this spring, it's going to be absolutely key for him to get those same, even just against air. You can get a lot better. You can make a lot of progress as a receiver. Jugs machine, catching the ball from the North Sellers throughout the summer. And that's just, I feel like there are a lot of potential options at this receiver group. We just don't know which ones are going to emerge. And that's better than having no options. But at the same time, it also makes it inherently difficult to predict.
Yeah, you can't get mad. Like, you can't have revisionist history. Man, we're going to get Nick Harbor. He's going to run He's going to run track and play football for us. To be like, oh, I don't want him to run track anymore. You know? Or I want him to be really good at track while still devoting most of his time to football. You can't do that. You can't, if people are saying, hey, you can't be elite at football devoting a lot of your time to track, the other is also true. He couldn't be out there in spring practice getting, turning an ankle and getting thigh contusions and getting knocked around and beating up your body and then go try to, sprint. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work that way. So, again, I think you've got to temper expectations for Harbor whenever he does get to return. People despite everybody who followed that recruitment and Shane Beamer and others trying to caution, hey, I know this guy was a 5-star. He was ranked highly. No, he's big. He's fast. Here are some reasons you shouldn't set the bar too high, but it's so tantalizing
Yeah, well,
to not do it.
he's the shiny object, and I think we're going to run into the same thing with Dylan Stewart. Obviously, that's a different case, but if he doesn't come in and have an immediate impact in the first handful of games, we're going to be like, what the heck? I thought this dude was supposed to be a superstar. Like, it doesn't always happen that way, but that's what people expect when you put that label of, hey, this is somebody that you're projecting to be a first-round pick in a couple of years. Why isn't he doing what we thought he was going to be doing?
Yeah, and I think important to remember 5-star athlete. There's a reason for that designation versus 5-star wide receiver. And, I think that will be another key. You want to talk about keys on offense. Can South Carolina, particularly if he does miss more time, can they still find ways to use Harbor's skill set and put him in positions to where that natural talent is not wasted? We saw him, it was interesting, the kind of balance last year of people. Remember first month to see where's Harbor, where's Harbor, where's Harbor, and then we saw him go play. We saw some ups and some downs. There were some other times where he made some plays down the field where it didn't necessarily look completely natural, but that you're going, okay, I'm thinking the Florida game in particular. You're saying he went and made a play, he made a catch for you, and so I think there are some ways to use his skill set without just kind of forcing him into the action. I think the addition of Delvon Campbell gives you a little bit almost of a hedge in that if Harbor isn't quite ready to step up and be that guy, be the dude, I think Campbell and his size, his experience, and he can run too. Like he's not running 10. What is Harbor at? 10-2? 10-1?
What goes up every time, or goes down more accurately.
Yeah,
every
what's
time
the latest?
He runs.
10-2, 10-1?
He's fast.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
Campbell's not going to go run that, but this guy for a big kid,
In high school, he
can move.
Yeah.
he was, what Campbell, I don't know, 10-7, 10-8 in high school at his size. He's gotten a little bigger, but yeah, he's not a big plotter, right?
Yeah.
He's a guy who I think if Campbell had been playing, you remember he signed out of high school with Illinois. Like if he were still at Illinois, he might have already, gone pro, I think, because he's a big kid who can run, and he has that type of ball skills down the field where he has kind of a knack for the spectacular catch. And I think that was the thing that South Carolina was missing. If you got to throw a ball up on third down, do you have a guy that can go win a 50-50 ball? I don't really know if they had that until you got Delvon Campbell as a transfer.
For sure. We'll hear more about what Coach Beamer had to say at the Welcome Home event, including his thoughts on this changing landscape of college football. And yesterday, we got some big news that is really kind of setting things forward in motion on what the future of all college sports are going to be as soon as next year. But that coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour and the Extra Point. We're live out at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. Tyler West and Chris, go until noon. Stores open. Come by and see us. Get a sub, get a T-shirt, get some Fireflies tickets. Have a great time. Again, go until noon here on the game. What's happening, Joe?
Hi, Tyler. How are you?
Good to go.
Yeah, good. Ready when you are.
All right, cool. We're going to talk about the new NIL stuff, the NCAA settlement. I got a beamer cut about it, so we'll just riff on that a little bit.
Awesome. Sweet.
All right, cool.
Sounds good.
What's that? All right.
Oh, I said sounds good. Yeah, perfect.
Cool. All right, sweet. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, live at Firehouse Subs here on Forest Drive. Going until noon. Stores open. Come by and get a delicious sub, get a t-shirt, get some Firefly tickets, the whole 9 yards. Having a great time out here. And again, going until noon. Our guy, intern Joe, is going to join us for a couple minutes here as he does with me each and every Friday. And guys, we got a lot to talk about because the nature of college football and college sports in general is officially going to change as soon as next year. The SEC and the Pac-12 officially signing off on the settlement for the NCAA for the House versus NCAA settlement or court case where they're going to be paying $2.7 billion to former college athletes for basically not being able to profit off NIL for the 100 some odd years before it became illegal. So now we're on the fast track to officially making college athletes employees of universities.
Yeah, this is a big, decision. It's a big moment in college athletics. But here's one thing to get out in front. I know we're going to dissect what this means. I think there's a little bit of thought with this that, okay, this is done. Like this House settlement is going to result in X amount of back pay, X amount of potential, like this capped, right, from what the schools themselves can give athletes. And that's going to be it, right? That's not the case, really. There's another court case. There's the Fontenot case.
Yep.
The NCAA's even put out a statement on this. All of the power conferences have agreed to the settlement for the House case, and some other court cases have gotten rolled into that one. But there's still kind of some more work to do here. There's still some more questions. Will the NCAA get an antitrust exemption from Congress? If they don't, the NCAA is actually still potentially liable in some other court cases if anybody sues them in the future. This doesn't end everything.
No, it doesn't. And there's still a lot of steps along in the process. And Joe will bring you in on this. We like to talk about the future of college sports, being this thing that seems really far off in the distance. But now we kind of, again, have this target date of maybe as soon as fall of 2025 are these things becoming live. And I mean, the reality is here. We're right in the face of it now. And it's going to be changed before our eyes over these next couple of months and weeks as well.
Yeah, Tyler, certainly. I mean, as Chris said, it's certainly changing as we still go, but the dominoes are falling here, and it's headed towards the right direction in terms of, student athletes getting paid and whatnot and becoming employees of the universities. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you how much this landscape of collegiate athletics has been changing, and it's been really fun to watch these last couple of years too, and just how much it's evolved. And then also, the name, image, and likeness thing has been great. So just the shifting towards the employee model and everything, making sure athletes get their right has been a great thing to see.
And we know universities, we bring up the Texas A&M example a lot. They started laying people off a couple weeks back in preparation for this because they got to start reallocating some of those athletic funds to be able to meet this cap of around $22 million, like's been discussed. And I'm sure there are plenty of other schools. South Carolina themselves probably is already setting things up to be ready for this whenever it does go live. Because again, you either have to get on and pay yourself up to that full potential or get left behind by not wanting to commit to this 100%.
Yeah, I feel like guys, and by the way, Ross Dellinger, who is easily one of my favorite national guys. If you're not following him, go follow him on Twitter.
He's probably qualified to be a lawyer at this point.
He is so good. This stuff has gotten so there's so much legalese in all this. If you go read Ross's thread on Twitter X, it actually makes it a little bit more understandable. And I think even now we still there's a lot of questions that have yet to be answered, but a couple of things that stand out to me. One of them being, how are they going to police what, quote, true NIL means?
They're not.
And I'm kind of struggling to figure out. So the schools are going to be able to allocate a rev share, but then you also have to have true NIL that the burden will be on the school and the athlete to prove. And one of the enforcements is there's supposed to still be no pay for play or booster pay. Collectives aren't going away.
No, they're not.
But how does all this get actually policed? How does all this actually get structured to where, are we using a formula? Like I'm still a little bit confused on all this.
And Joe, it kind of seems like we're almost setting the table for another version of the Wild Wild West, where yes, you have these guidelines where athletes are going to be able to get paid by the universities, making a base salary, and then be able to profit off NIL in addition to that. But there's still going to be nefarious things happening behind the scenes, under the table kind of stuff that's just essentially shifting into a new gray area that we didn't otherwise think existed up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely, Wes. I loved what you were saying because the cat is out of the bag at this point, right? I think it's going to be so hard to go back and try to police some of this stuff that's already been in place in collegiate athletics and some of the shadier things and the shadier dealings. It's going to be so hard to backtrack and clean all this up. So I think, and to Tyler, your point too, like it is becoming the wild, wild west again. And it was like this at the start with NIL and collectives, and then, state legislatures and everybody got involved. And so now it's going to be, the same thing. It's going to be really hard to go back and try to police all this stuff. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Again, as the dominoes fall, it's going to be hard to clean up the mess behind them, and we'll see what that kind of leads to.
Yeah, there's been in the past, there was actually a similar version of that same rule in the past NIL quote unquote guidance NCAA put out that, hey, if you do NIL deals, they have to be true NIL. They actually put something in that said, just like this, a third party has to kind of validate it. And then you go, well, who's the third party? Who are you to say, or who is this third party to say what fair market value is? That sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen. And once again, it does here too. And again, that is why it's so important. They have a structure now. They have a settlement for this particular case. But if this is going to kind of be somewhat of the ending point, then it really is at this point going to take some type of federal legislation to stop it. Because if it doesn't, if the NCAA tries to enforce some of the things that are in this settlement, they're still actually open for liability.
Chris, I think I have a feel for this, but I'm going to ask what maybe people out there are probably going to ask as well. So the revenue share, 20 to 22 million annually per school, but also that number will be fluid and it could change based on the actual school revenue coming in based on those figures. So then that's going to be distributed to student athletes. Title IX does apply, which is an important aspect of this. Two, every school is going to have a different way they see fit that's going to affect their recruiting. It's going to affect their success. It's going to affect everything about what they do. So help me out. Once you do that,
Chris is our expert on this.
He is. Once you do that, then you still have third party NIL, and it's just the third party NIL that is supposedly going to be under that structure of it has to be true NIL based on fair market value data. Is that right?
Yeah.
Like none of the true NIL stuff applies to that 20 to 22 million. That's literally just a payment from the school that is a revenue share that really is being called a revenue share because they don't want them to actually be called employees.
Yes, they're trying to say it's not pay for play, but it really is. It's a revenue share on that 20 to 22 million, and that number can escalate based on actually the school's revenue that they're bringing in. So it's a yes, and I don't know, because the thing that I haven't been able to wrap my head around yet is, let's say a school, has, let's just call it $20 million, and that's what they're going to distribute to their athletes as part of the revenue share. Well, then the third party deals, so you can call that a brand deal or collectives aren't going away. So a collective deal,
Let's say Firehouse Subs.
Firehouse Subs, right? So if somebody does an endorsement for Firehouse Subs, the school and the athlete would very easily be able to prove he did a social post for Firehouse Subs, whatever. He did an appearance at Firehouse Subs. What I don't know is, does that, let's say it's $100, to use a round figure, does that $100 go toward the cap? I don't know that. I actually asked Jeremy Smith from Garnet Trust if he knows, and he said that discussion is kind of on the table. I feel like it's probably a little bit more down the road than we actually know.
Sure.
But that part is what's not clear. Is it 20 million plus more dollars? I'm not. That's my impression, but I'm not 100% sure.
That's a very important
That's
distinction.
a very important distinction.
And then my question on top of that would be, is there a distinction between if the school, because the school can be more involved potentially now, if the school says, hey, we are facilitating this where Firehouse Subs is going to do a brand deal with Lenora Sellers, and it counts because the school is the one who facilitated it, but it wouldn't count if Larry himself goes to a student athlete and says, hey, I'm doing a brand deal with you.
Yeah.
That the school has no involvement in facilitate. Are those two things separate or not? I think will be another key factor in this.
At the end of the day, we have more questions than answers right now. A lot of details to be hammered out. Again, more court cases ongoing that can continue to shift this, but we're on the fast track, as I mentioned. This is likely going to come about by 2025, and we'll find out all the details in due time with all that. Speaking of NIL, we haven't gotten a chance to dive into this a whole lot this week, but the Jaden Rashada situation with the lawsuit against Billy Napier and those down at the University of Florida. We'll kind of give our thoughts and dive into that as well. Again, we're broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. Tyler, West, and Chris. Intern Joe hanging out with us as he does each and every Friday for a couple segments as well. Here going until noon on the game.
Our friends over at Integrated Media, Michael and Nathan, have been to my home. They've been to Wes Mitchell's home, and they can come out to your home or business to help take it to the next level from an audio-visual standpoint. Whatever you may need at your home or business from an audio-visual standpoint, they can help you, whether it's security or cameras to keep things safe and secure, whether it's just something as simple as, if you need a new TV mounted on the wall or on your screen porch or your outdoor patio, they can do that for you, but they can also outfit your home or business with a complete smart home system. It's a way to control your lights, your devices, your cameras, your thermostat, even when you're away from home or in an app. From the touch.
Hey, you got us, Joe?
Our friends at Integrated Media.
Yeah, I got you, Tyler.
Give them a call at 803-948-8327, integratedmediainc.com.
You got me? Hello?
Okay, sorry. It went out. That's just
All right. Yeah, all good.
Yes, sir. You got it.
Hold on. Okay, sorry. I had to catch back up. Just making sure you're good.
Yeah, everything's good. You can hear me?
Yeah, okay. It just went out on us.
All right. Yeah, perfect.
All right, sweet. Welcome back in. Extra Point Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, live at Firehouse Subs. That's a mouthful. That's a lot to say. Again, Tyler, West, and Chris out here until noon. Intern Joe joining us as he does each and every Friday for a couple segments in the 10 o'clock hour. We talked about NIL in the last segment and what's going on with the House versus NCAA case, which is going to be settled. That $2.7 billion getting paid to former athletes and all the things that are coming down the pipeline because of that. You and I talked about this a little bit earlier on in the week. Didn't really get to dive into it. I want to bring Joe in on this conversation as well. The Jaden Rashada situation, suing both Billy Napier and people involved in the Florida collective that promised him the about $14 million in December of 2022. It didn't end up coming to fruition. He, of course, goes to Arizona State. He's now at Georgia and now lofting this lawsuit against. And the University of Florida is not involved, by the way. This is only Napier and these folks with the collective. What happens from here, I don't know, but I'll say this: Jaden Rashada has a really good case.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to follow this one, and there's been a lot of different takes on it. I even saw Carl Reed, who's a guy from actually works for 24/7 Sports. He had some very interesting takes on this, and one of them was that, you know, the system has kind of failed Billy Napier because coaches should not be in the position to negotiate. I actually think a little bit of the opposite. I can't imagine a scenario that could have been created that would prevent coaches from having to be part of it, right? I mean,
Sure.
if NIL is part of recruiting or anything that's part of recruiting, coaches are going to be involved in it. You know, I tend to think that those associated with Florida just kind of made bad decisions and dropped the ball. They had this ill-conceived plan to where, hey, we're gonna flip this kid from Miami. We're gonna, make this big splash. We're gonna get this 4-star quarterback in the fold, and we're gonna promise him an amount of money that, frankly, was probably completely unnecessary, to get there. And it was just an absolute disaster for him. And you feel bad for Rashada because he did get looped into it, and he was kind of sold a bill of goods, to be frank.
And Joe, we already know Billy Napier has an uphill battle. Just being the Florida coach in general, that's a tough ask for anybody. You're dealing with a lot of people that have high expectations. They've already had a rough first 2 years. They got a dog of a schedule this upcoming year. Now he's got this lawsuit on his plate. I don't know if he makes it to the end of the season.
No, I mean, Tyler, it begs the question, right, of Billy Napier's job. The fact that this lawsuit was from 2022 shows that Billy Napier has been doing this for a while. And I mean, we've heard the rumblings with recruits and stuff being promised a bag at Florida and then not getting it and then, committing to a different school. So, it shows what Billy Napier has been doing. I think for Florida, right, I think it's the ideal situation, right? If Napier isn't great on the field, they have an out, right? And then they can, do another coaching search, try to find somebody, who is, more capable for the Florida job. Because, they're a big name in the SEC when they're good. So, it just begs the question, right? If this is going to be the end of Billy Napier, who are they going to go get? I think it's the out for the University of Florida. They've been disgruntled with him for a while. And so, yeah, now this whole thing with negotiating all that money and then, not delivering is kind of wild. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him.
And Joe, you nailed the part that really sticks out to me about this. It reminds me a lot of what happened with Jeremy Pruitt when he was at Tennessee, where they tied him into the deal with handing out, McDonald's bags of money to recruits before NIL became a thing. And that gave them their out to fire him with cause and not have to play him a buyout. And again, Florida fans not happy with Billy Napier. The alumni down there not happy with Billy Napier, that if things go sideways, and again, we talk about how tough that month of November is for them, where they may not win a game. If they get off to a 1-5 start this season or something like that, and they're ready to pull the trigger, you can do it, and it's not going to cost you anything because now you have this reason for firing because he's tied into this lawsuit as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this definitely does give him an out for sure. Regardless, Billy Napier is going to be out this year if they don't have any success. This might prevent them from paying a Jimmy Sexton negotiated buyout, which for Florida would be a cherry on top. But this has been, potentially damaging to their brand, because now you're going from, this came up in the news, right? It certainly had, from what I hear from folks down in Florida, it did have an effect on their recruiting. A lot of people were talking about it. The collectives down there There was more than one at one point. One of them folded. It was kind of a mess. But now it's kind of back at the forefront. And now I think the pressure is on, right? And so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I agree with y'all. Rashada definitely has a good case on this one.
Joe, you think they're going to give Marcus Freeman up at Notre Dame a call if they let Billy Napier go?
As a South Bend native, I would hope not, but I don't think Marcus Freeman takes that call either. But no, I mean,
I
and
wouldn't.
I
if you
would
look,
not.
no, I know, and just the way that Florida is right now, I don't know. It's going to take something. And that's again the fear of as from a South Carolina lens, right? That's the fear is that they get somebody competent in there that can really squeeze all the pulp out of the orange that is Florida football that it can be.
And that's the funny thing when we talk about Florida is we're so preconceived to immediately think about like the Tebow years, national championships, Urban Meyer, and all that kind of stuff. They've not been that Florida program in almost 2 decades now, but they're a program that had success in the 90s with Spurrier, again, Urban Meyer, and even McElwain took them to a couple of SEC championship games, albeit, the SEC East was down at that point in time, but it's a program that we just expect to always be at the top tier of college football, and the fan base obviously expects that too, and they just haven't been that in a long time. And again, if they decide to move on from Napier, they're going to be expecting to go out there and get that next number one hotshot head coach to take them to heights. And I just don't know if they're that program anymore.
Yeah, they've definitely struggled. I mean, Florida's a place where you can recruit pretty well. I mean, I don't want to say it's on autopilot because there's been a lot of instances in a lot of years through multiple coaches where it certainly hadn't been autopilot, right?
Yeah.
You kind of look at it and you go, you're at the University of Florida. Like you have an entire state, right, of really good high school football in Florida where you can draw from. You play in a great conference. You've got a really good fan base and you've had success in the past. Like there's a proof of concept at Florida under more than one coach, Spurrier, Urban Meyer, like you said, Tyler, where you can go win. But this type of, at the same time, a lot of coaches have not found that success. Ron Zook, Will Muschamp, Jim McElwain, Dan Mullen. I mean, there have been a lot of coaches that have ended up being fired from Florida.
Are we all off, and like the collective we, all of us, on Florida and how good of a job it is?
Well,
I
that's
would
what
say-
we were just talking about.
Oh,
Marcus
yeah.
Freeman, if Florida called him, you might go, oh, Florida, that's a great job. Why would you leave Notre Dame for Florida?
Like I think it's just that's a different animal down there, man.
It
And
is.
when you have Florida State and Miami, I won't even say at the top, when you have them just being competitive,
Yep.
like there are so many little rivalries within the high schools down there, and this school might be an FSU school, this one might be a Miami school, and I just really, yes, Spurrier won there, obviously. Urban, those are elite coaches.
And they
Oh,
are
yeah.
coaches that command that type of success. And
Yeah.
again, you had interesting personalities with Mullen and even guys like Muschamp and McElwain as well. And look, I'm not trying to dog on Billy Napier here. He just seems kind of like a stick in the mud more than anything else. He doesn't stick out to me as somebody that can kind of take a grasp on the city of Gainesville and really lead it to where it needs to go or where they expect him to go.
No, and Tyler, I was about to say, like, you need an interesting personality at the Florida job. I mean, you look at Spurrier, you look at Urban Meyer, right, and you look at those teams. Like, it takes a lot, and it takes somebody who's just different from the rest of the pack to lead Florida. And I mean, that's the nature of the Florida job. That's the nature of recruiting in Florida, the whole state, everything. So like, I mean, it's interesting to see, like, because again, I think there is, if you can get somebody who has that, different personality trait or whatever that can recruit and then get the guys to play for him, they can get Florida back onto the national stage and make it a more attractive job. But I think right now it's certainly not one of them.
Certainly not looking good down there right now, and we'll see what becomes of this lawsuit. I thought it was funny. Kirby Smart had no problem signing off on Jaden Rashada launching this lawsuit against Billy Napier. I think the cocktail party might get very interesting this year, to say the least. Again, we're broadcasting live out of Firehouse Subs on Fortis Drive. Tyler West, Chris, intern Joe, hanging out in the 10 o'clock hour as he does each and every Friday. We're going until noon. Come by and see us. Got Firefly tickets, got T-shirts. Just gave away some stuff a few minutes ago to one of our listeners, and of course, got some delicious Firehouse subs as well. Again, go until noon here on the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark hanging out here at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. Intern Joe hanging out with us for a few more minutes here as he does each and every Friday. Guys, I have finally tried the barbecue Cuban. I can confirm it is delicious, even though I was wrongly accused of eating it last time, which I did not. But it is good, as advertised.
So,
Take
what
that,
are your
Terry.
thoughts on the spicy pickles?
Good. Adds a little bit
good
of
little topper.
heat on the end. And I've
Yep.
said this before. I'm not a coleslaw guy, but the crunch it adds to the sandwich is a nice little touch.
Y'all know I'm not a pickle guy, but I do like pickles on a Cuban.
Exactly.
And they're not spicy. Some people hear spicy and
Yeah,
are like
yeah.
good. Some
It's
people
not.
hear spicy.
It's not overpowering.
It's not
Flavorful.
like
No.
a spice.
It's you
It's not
can.
a heavy spice.
It's there. You notice it, but it doesn't like overpower the rest of the sandwich, which I think is a really good compliment. So 10 out of 10. If you haven't tried the barbecue Cuban, I highly recommend it. Guys, to wrap up this hour, this is an important weekend. Obviously, it's holiday weekend. Everybody gets to most of us get to enjoy Monday off, but Monday's a big day for Carolina football. You get the full team back. Got meetings on Monday, start workouts again on Tuesday, and then just as importantly, next weekend, you start your run of June recruiting visits. You're going to have a lot of guys in town, and you guys can all speak to how important this next month is going to be, not only for the current team, but the future of building this roster as well.
Yeah, big week. Not only getting the team back now, a lot of guys, Shane Beamer pointed out recently at the last Welcome Home Tour stop, a lot of guys did stay here in May, but some guys did not. So you get your full team back, but recruiting is really, really important this summer. Something else Beamer talked about recently was the fact that the vast majority of the guys they're recruiting in the 2025 class in this cycle are going to make college decisions before the season starts. So now you start looking at it, you're kind of up against it, right? You've got June, July, you've got August. There's not much going on from a recruiting standpoint in July. So really that's why it's so important to do these official visits in June. You got camps going on. The first camp date is also on May 31st, which coincides with the Friday that's the first official visit weekend too.
June has just quickly become one of the most important months of the year, really for your roster building as much as anything, because you're talking about getting that, in some cases, getting that firsthand or maybe even final look at a guy in person that you're thinking about offering. We see that, especially I feel like in this state, it's so important to get those firsthand evaluation opportunities for guys. I mean, there's guys on the roster right now. Nicky Mawuri, he was a camp offer and obviously has been a 2-year starter for South Carolina. So it's huge because of that. It's huge because the team is diving back into summer strength conditioning workouts and doing some stuff with the staff in terms of like walkthroughs and against air and stuff like that. And then, of course, you got official visits as well. And Beamer talked about it. Almost all your targets that are going to be visiting in the month of June are going to be making decisions within the next couple of months. So you've got to put your best foot forward. You've got to show them a great time and kind of give them that lingering final impression of your program.
Yeah, I mean, June has been really, really good for Shane Beamer and company. You guys know this as well as I do, covering, recruiting these last couple summers. So it's a really, really good chance to, show what your program's all about. Also getting the guys back is really good. Start working out, start trending towards, when things really pick up and summer camp starts and, you have to start proving yourself. So I think it's good. And it's also good having those guys, on campus, obviously, with guys visiting, touring, it's always fun to watch. The competition to see who gets the most commits out of hosting and stuff like that. So it's heating up and it's been traditionally good for, Shane Beamer and company, like we've said. So you got a lot of dogs coming on campus and, a lot of those guys are in big recruiting battles. So it's heating up, and June is certainly the month to watch in terms of recruiting.
By the way, love the hat, Joe.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You look at this first weekend too of May 31st, and right off the bat, you've got some big timers coming in. Now, I think there's 3 main visit weekends: May 31st, June 7th, June 21st. There are important visitors every single weekend, but you can just see like they're not saving everybody for one particular big weekend, right? They're all going to be big. And there's, I think, 14 guys coming in on the 31st between official visits and some key unofficials. You got Malik Clark from Rock Hill, who's a big battle of the Carolinas, South Carolina, North Carolina. You've got some commitments coming in. But I mean, it's just littered with 4-star guys. Some are committed to the Gamecocks, some are big targets. Jared Smith out of Alabama is another big one. You've got some legitimate big boy recruitments, and you got some guys where if you can sign a high percentage of some guys from this first weekend, you'd be well on your way to putting together another big class. On the other hand, if you don't sign some of them, you could be looking back going, man, we really could have used that guy, lost that big battle. So this will be a very telling first weekend here in the next several days.
Absolutely, and a lot of important things happening over the course of the next month from the players on campus as well as the future guys coming in on the official visits. Last minute here, and Joe, we talked a lot of football in this hour, but quickly wanted to get your thoughts. Team getting bounced today. They're playing more baseball the rest of the weekend.
I don't know. I think they got a good shot against Kentucky. They had their number against the bullpen, so no, I think they're playing a little bit more baseball this weekend. I don't know. I just got a feeling against the Wildcats.
Well, hopefully so. And again, that game coming up today at 4 o'clock, pregame coverage starting at 3:45 right here on the game. We'll jump back into the baseball conversation a little bit more in the next hour. Jack Belcher going to join us from Hoover, as he's done every single day this
Every
week.
day.
He's on
He's
like a
the man.
9-show
Hoover
streak.
Watch with Jack.
I'm sure he's eating a lot of ice cream yesterday too because it was a late
Yeah.
game.
Is it still a big time TBA versus TBA battle? Have we seen an announcement?
Last I looked, I'll
think
double
so.
check again in the next break, but I don't think, unless you've seen something, Joe, I don't think we still have a starting pitcher for today yet.
No, nothing yet. But Jack's been killing it in Hoover. So yeah, excited to listen to his thoughts on the way.
So again, we'll jump back into that conversation coming up the next hour. Joe, appreciate it. We'll talk to you once again next Friday.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tyler, as always.
Again, it is the Extra Point in the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We were hanging out at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. The sandwiches are on the table. We got T-shirts, Firefly tickets to give away. We're having a great time out here. One more hour to go. Come by and see us going until noon here on the game.
turn on the Super Bowl one year. This is me, Russ, and Tyler talking about Firehouse.
11 o'clock. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, West Metro, Chris Clark broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. We got sandwiches. Larry's out here. I got Elliot just came in. He's been listening to us all morning long, giving away tickets, T-shirts, and again, sandwiches all over the place, having a fantastic time here out at Firehouse Subs on a very exciting Friday, by the way. Been talking about it all morning long, which I'm back into the conversation. Of course, Gamecock baseball out there in Hoover, exceeding the expectations for what I think a lot of us had for them going in to this week, where, of course, you come in off of the 6-game losing streak to Georgia and then to Tennessee last weekend. A lot of us were afraid they were going to go into that first game against Alabama, get bounced, and then suddenly you're talking about 7-game losing streak and worried about what the committee is going to do in terms of viewing you for your postseason aspirations of next week's NCAA tournament. And they have done a fantastic job through 3 games so far, building that resume a little bit further. Now, yeah, last night's game didn't go the way that you wanted it to go. Ended up losing 11-10 to LSU in a very back-and-forth game. A lot of offense was what we were expecting. Errors kind of ended up killing you towards the end of that game as well. But at the end of the day, you have gotten 2 wins this week, which bolster your resume. Still have another opportunity today against Kentucky, and you can still play your way back in to maybe even win the SEC tournament when it's all said and done, because you win today, you're back in the semifinals tomorrow, and who knows what happens the rest of the weekend. But regardless, at the end of the day, they've done a lot this week to turn their fortunes around from how they ended the regular season.
Tyler, I'm putting you on the spot here, but let's re-rack the scenarios. So
Yep.
South Carolina could have gotten themselves an off day if they would have won last night.
Correct.
And then they would have played in the Saturday game. But let's tell everybody, including myself, what happens if South Carolina wins today?
Yes, let me get my handy-dandy bracket.
The
back up
handy-dandy
here.
SEC tournament
Because,
bracket.
and here's the thing, the format of the SEC tournament has changed a lot over the years, particularly once you go to 14 teams, now over a decade ago. But
And Vanderbilt, by the way, did they win last night?
that was the late game. I did not stay up for that one.
Yes, so Vanderbilt won, so they're now playing in game 14 on Saturday. So
That is correct.
here's the scenario. So Tennessee plays Mississippi State today. South Carolina plays Kentucky. So if the Gamecocks win, they would play, drumroll, LSU
Yes.
on Saturday at noon.
So you get a rematch if you win today.
Man, that
Which, in a weird way, just hear me out here.
I'm with you.
You did lose to LSU last night.
Yep.
Winning the last night would have gotten you today off. You now have the opportunity against another quad 1 team in Kentucky today to potentially, if you beat them, avenge your loss on Saturday against LSU, and then play whoever potentially on Sunday if you get that far. So
which would be the championship.
Which would be the championship game. So you have the opportunity to do a lot more to add to that resume and maybe get yourself out of the Clemson regional this weekend.
All I can think about was hear me out. Taking a kicker over Alshon Jeffrey.
That take was better.
Hear me out,
That
guys.
was a better take.
No, what is that? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
No, for real, I think it's a good point. And all these games from an RPI standpoint, metric standpoint, have been good because they count as neutral sites, obviously, and everybody in this tournament is pretty well thought of when it comes to the metrics. So really just winning and extending it out and getting that, whether you win or lose the games, almost getting the opportunity to play more kind of helps your metrics to an extent, I think.
Yeah, so for the kind of full look at the bracket, of course, South Carolina plays Kentucky today. The winner of that game plays LSU Saturday at noon for a shot to go to the title game. Loser goes home. And then Vanderbilt, because of their win last night, they will play on Saturday against the winner of today's other game, Tennessee, Mississippi State.
Which, by the way, Vanderbilt winning also helps South Carolina because you did sweep them earlier in the season as they continue climbing the RPI.
Yes, they continue to go up.
A lot of things happening.
Again, it goes back to what you said earlier, Wes. This is opportunity. For those who went into the tournament like dreading it, which, look, I get based on some of the past results. But if you went in dreading it and saying it doesn't really matter, I mean, it's already mattered, right? By winning the 2 games that you've won, you've already put yourself in a bit of a better spot. Now, how much is kind of up for debate and depends on what you do the rest of the weekend. but you're still in the tournament. You've got one loss. You can very much still go win it. You can win one more game and then lose. If you can win some more games, however many that ends up being, you can continue to help your cause.
We had a question posed to us on the Firehouse Subs text line yesterday at the end of the halftime show. Do you think if Carolina runs Staple this weekend and wins the SEC tournament, they would be in position to host? Is that enough to get them back into one of those top 16 seeds?
I think that's one of those questions where here locally, you would blindly want to say, well, yeah, of course. And I think it puts them in the conversation. Whether or not they would actually host, I think probably comes down to a lot of variables and details that I can't spout off at you right now off the cuff. Like I think the D1 baseball guys would maybe have an answer for you on that. But that 6-game losing streak just puts you in such a hole for that. Even with the win, maybe not. Like maybe even with a tournament win, maybe not. But certainly, I think if you are the SEC tournament champion, and you're talking about, let's see, so they won 13 SEC games in the regular season.
Yep.
They've won 2 at the tournament, so that's 15. Then in that scenario, you would have won 17 total SEC games this year, and I think a lot of it would maybe depend on. It's almost like the bubble, right? At that point, there's a bubble for hosting as well. Who that is also in that 13 to then 17, 18 spot. Like there's probably some very tight resumes there. If there was close to being a tie, though, would an SEC tournament championship potentially give you a tiebreaker?
Yeah, I think it might be 2 different questions. It's like, will they host in that scenario versus should they host? Do they deserve to host? And look, I think we all know the players and Mark Kingston would go up on that podium if they won the SEC tournament and be like,
rightfully so.
Absolutely. Yeah, rightfully so. You're going to make your case. But I make your case, by the way. Segment here on the game. I think they would deserve to, right? But that's a different question than will they?
Mm-hmm. I think what you could point to that would help them would be obviously just having that trophy on your resume would be the metrics of at that point. I think is your RPI in the top 16 like that? That's your cutoff there anyway. You want to be one of the top 16 teams. I would say it probably would be. And then how many other SEC teams are at that point projected to host? Mm-hmm. That would be a fact. I think on the other side, the thing that really would hurt them at the end of the day would be the in-conference regular season record, obviously, and the fact that if you break it down by series, they won 3 of the 10 SEC series this year. That to me would be your strong case against them being a host. Like that to me would be the most effective argument against that. But
that's fair.
Yeah, and both sides of that are fair. But I think if you're the SEC tournament champion, and guys, I can't help but look back on yesterday as such a missed opportunity. Like I guess I've been using the word opportunity a lot, but when you have a 10-7 lead late in a game like that, and you've kind of pieced it bullpen throughout the game, but you've got yourself to the spot you want to be in, and then you even get it back to Veach, a guy you trust totally in that spot, then I got to think that we're probably going to look back if they lose the tournament, because it's a much more difficult path now, adding that extra game. You had a chance to not only get a 3rd straight win, have all the momentum in the world, but then to go rest everybody today and reset things on Saturday. And I think it's going to be difficult to win the thing at this point. But this team keeps surprising us both positively and negatively at times this year.
I think the biggest thing about the day off and the rest, too, not just for the position players, but, obviously the pitching staff, given, how they've had to kind of cobble together the pitching staff and kind of in some instances use a whole staff approach. That gets tougher and tougher the more games you play in the tournament.
It is, and we kind of knew that was going to be an issue for Carolina. Again, when you go back to what Veach and Gainey were able to do in the first 2 games, where they ate more innings than you probably thought they would, where you only had to use 3 pitchers in each of those games, respectively, it saved you some arms for a little bit later on in the week. Now, yes, they had to use a couple more guys yesterday, so it probably ends up kind of balancing it out. But now you're to the point where a guy like SQ, who did start the other day, has the opportunity to come back and start again today, or use him however you want to. And we'll get with Jack in the next segment to kind of figure out what exactly the pitching situation is going to look like, because you are going to have to get a little bit creative today.
Who would y'all start?
I mean, I guess SQ. That probably makes the most sense,
Yeah.
right?
I think so.
Yeah, I would say him, and a lot of times these decisions are going to be made based on information we don't have, which
Sure.
could be.
Which he did pitch well against Kentucky the other week when they beat him in that 3rd game. So that
Yeah, he
also
was a
plays
third game.
into it. Yeah.
So that's probably, I think, if he feels good, like you've got to be able to trust your guy too, to tell you, do I need another day, or do I feel good? He didn't throw a ton of pitches. I think even just to get you off to a start, right? Like even if it's go 1 inning, 2 innings, then I think that's their process at this point. Is just keep the pitch counts down, keep the number of times. And at SQ, I actually think this is the best way to use him. It feels like when he starts getting deeper into games and faces an opponent 2nd or 3rd time, at times he kind of loses his command a little bit, maybe tries to be a little bit too fine in how he's pitching guys, or he starts maybe pitching them a little bit differently that 2nd or 3rd time through. I think even if he can just be a solid opener for you, both in this tournament, but more importantly in the big one, once you get into regionals, that's valuable as well. I think we were all kind of figuring out how do they piggyback with Ty Good, and obviously they tried it with Roman Kimball. The answer may actually be, as we've seen, Dylan Eskew and then Ty Good piggyback together.
Kimball's also a pitcher you have not used this week, so he could also be in position to start. Now, again, his last outing did not go all that great, so where's he at with that? We don't know, but another option on the table there.
If you wanted to just go completely fresh arm,
yeah,
this may. How much does this play in? I know you want to win this thing. This may be his last opportunity to go pitch meaningful innings without the season being on the line.
That's a good point.
So do you tell Kimball, look, this is a big park. I know the ball's been flying out, but throw strikes. Like if you get hit, you get hit. Just go out there, let it ride. This is an opener situation. He's got to get back to throwing strikes. Don't nibble. Just go out there, because you kind of do feel like you may need him at some point, but you don't want to have to go to him in a key situation without having pitched in a long time.
You 100% need him. I mean, you need the best version of everybody at this point, because, today's winner go home from the SEC tournament, but then you're going to get into actual NCAA tournament, and that's the end of your season. That's not the end of your run in Hoover. That's the end of the entire year. So I do kind of like that strategy, Wes, with Kimball of getting him in there, even if it's not necessarily the opener, get him in there earlier in the game, to see if you can get things turned around there. I do like that strategy.
We'll get more answers to those questions and also get Jack Belcher's recap from last night out in Hoover and that loss to LSU. Coming up next, again, we are broadcasting live at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. Tower Head, West Metro, Chris Clark along with you. Go until noon. Come by and see us, get a sandwich, get a T-shirt, get some Firefly tickets as well. Again, going until noon on Forest Drive here on The Game.
What's going on?
What's happening, Jack?
Not too much, man. I appreciate you having me on. This is definitely different from doing the call-in show. What's
Absolutely. It sounds a little. Yeah, it sounds a little cleaner this way. So when we can do it this way, it helps.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Kind of delayed.
The video is a little delayed, but the sound is good. So, do you have a favorite Firehouse sub?
Ooh, God, I haven't been to Firehouse in a minute, so I couldn't really tell you. But I mean, I love a good sub. Like, cannot go wrong. So, oh, is that Wes in the background?
Don't say that.
Oh yeah, whole gang's out here.
Oh, the
hanging out.
whole
Chris.
gang. Let's
Yeah,
go.
who's starting
What's up,
the pitcher
Chris?
today?
What's up?
Who's the starting pitcher today? Who's the starting pitcher?
TBA. It's a great starting pitcher, man. It's a great option. The
I
guy's
know,
got
I
like
saw
a,
your tweet.
he's got like a 0.0 ERA this year. He's unbelievable.
They probably should throw him more then.
Yeah, I would say start SQ today, but I don't know. I doubt it's gonna be the same type of outing he had against Kentucky a month ago. So
Yeah, we'll see, man.
we'll see.
All right, I'm gonna mute us. You'll hear us coming through the thing when the show comes back on.
Sounds good.
Back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, along with you out at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. Again, going into come by and see us, get a delicious Firehouse Subs, get some Firefly tickets, got T-shirts, giveaway koozies, all 9 yards. Whole gang's out here having a great time. Continuing our conversation about Gamecock baseball, welcome in for I think the 10th consecutive show, Jack Veltri of Gamecock Central, hanging out there in Hoover. Jack, I know you're really glad they didn't have the late game last night, or else you still might be out at the ballpark.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm glad. I mean, I was still up at that point just because, look, I mean, that game ended really late for South Carolina last night. It was a wild one. A lot of thoughts, man, and I'm glad we're going to be able to talk about it here and kind of get to share them a little bit because, I mean, there's a lot to break down from this game, in my opinion.
Jack is fully Hoover-fied. He's been on the show for 9-10 days straight. He's got the beard going.
I think you got a little sunburn on the cheeks too there, right?
Oh, yeah. It's been sunny out here.
Well, inevitably Hoover, it always rains 2 or 3 days. So at least y'all haven't had to deal with that.
Crazy. It's crazy. It's totally different from any other year from what I've heard.
Jack, let's start with last night before we, let's put a bow on that one and not spend, maybe too much time on it. But to me, the story of the game was, really in the field, right? The errors. I mean, South Carolina, they left some things on the table in terms of runners, but you can't really complain about scoring 10 runs. We can talk about the last hit that former Gamecock Michael Braswell had, but to me, it was some key errors that really were the undoing that gave LSU the chance to be in that position.
I have to agree with you. This game definitely did come down to errors. And look, I've seen a lot of people thinking that, Mark Kingston shouldn't have made the defensive changes he did late in the game. But this is something he's been doing for a few games now. He's been doing it all season. And quite frankly, this is how baseball works. You make defensive changes late in games. That is nothing new. And the fact that, look, the errors that were made, you have to make those plays, right? The ground ball hit to third. Should have been a better throw to first from Lee Croy. And then later in the game, in that same inning, Gavin Casas gets a hard hit ground ball right his way. I watched the replay a little bit. If he gets his glove down a little more, he probably scoops it and makes that play. But that's just baseball. It's going to happen. They make mistakes. They're human. But at the same time, like those errors did have a big impact in the game, especially with a 3-run lead. And with Lee Croy's play, it would have been the second out of the inning, and then you get Tommy White to fly out to right. That would have ended it right there. But, you made the mistakes, and you got to move on. And South Carolina's defense has kind of been an issue this year. That's the trade-off you get with more offense for less defense, I suppose.
Now we kind of shift our focus to today, taking on Kentucky at 4 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 3:45. Right here on the game. Again, this is a team that you saw only a couple of weeks ago. Of course, South Carolina was able to take 2 out of 3 in that one, including the 10-run rule in that Sunday game just a couple of weeks back. So, Kentucky, again, one of the teams that's going to be hosting, here in a couple of weeks or here next week when the NCAA tournament gets started. And South Carolina has done a good job up to this point of, exceeding a lot of expectations. How do you see this matchup going today for the Gamecocks?
I'm not sure, quite honestly. I haven't really watched it. I watched some of Kentucky's game against Arkansas yesterday, and obviously before that they got blown out by LSU, run ruled, in fact. So I'm not sure what Kentucky team will show up. I do expect Kentucky to play a lot better this time around, and I think they're going to have that, revenge factor in their mind after getting a 10-0 run rule series loss to South Carolina about a month ago. I don't know. It depends on who South Carolina throws today. In my opinion, your best options are going to be Dylan Eskew, Matthew Becker, Roman Kimball, and Parker Marla. I feel like are your main go-to guys that you probably have to throw today in some order. And then Garrett Gainey, I would feel like is available today, but I would try to avoid using him if you can, as well as Eli Jones and Ty Good. I think you don't want to save pitchers necessarily, but with how critical condition South Carolina's pitching is in right now, I think you kind of have to, and we'll see what happens. But it really depends on if this offense is going to show up again and what the pitching kind of does behind that.
Again, talking to Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central live out in Hoover for the SEC tournament. And Wes, we were talking about this in the last segment. You mentioned Roman Kimball, who has not played at all this week, for the Gamecocks. You actually brought up a really interesting point about maybe wanting to use him today.
Yeah, Jack, I was thinking if you're going to need him in the real postseason, like the NCAA tournament, this might be your last opportunity to let him go build some confidence and actually have something to kind of build off of, because as we've seen the last few times out, there's not much to build off of there. So if you're counting on him, if you think you're going to need him some point today, as much as it could backfire, frankly, you may need to try him out there at some point. What do you think of that thought?
Yeah, I think we might have talked. I mean, I've been on this show a million times now this week. I think I might have brought it up the other day that, like, if South Carolina were to lose to LSU, I would go ahead and start Roman on Friday against whether it was going to be Kentucky or Arkansas. And that's just mainly because of what you said. They need to build his confidence a little bit. And he could definitely use a start where you throw him for 70, 80 pitches, regardless of what the score is. Just get him some confidence, man, because you're going to have to use him next week. And I don't think South Carolina – look, I like the plan with Mark Kingston using different guys in limited spots and not overextending anyone, so bullpen games per se, because they don't have starting pitching. But at the same time, I don't think it's going to work long-term if you say you're in a regional and you have to play 5 games. I don't see it working because we're seeing that right now where – you had to use Veach last night, and he was out of gas. So I think the more guys you find out that can pitch in these situations, like the freshman and Kimball and such, I think the better off you'll be for a potential long postseason run.
Yeah, and Jack, I think you also made this point. You can do it if you win those first 3 in the regional and just sail through. But then once you get in a situation like they're in today where you start adding additional games, I think that is when you start to get taxed. And we even saw it a little bit last night where they were starting to have to go to some guys that weren't necessarily your high leverage people. While we got you, man, I saw your post a little bit earlier today. The latest D1 baseball, field of 64. I mean, this thing has got some intrigue to it. Clemson, the 1 seed, South Carolina, the 2, and Charleston, the 3. I mean, can you think of a more interesting, I mean, even from a writer standpoint, man, the storylines you would have for this one, that's a dream.
That would be, oh my gosh. As if the Michael Braswell thing wasn't the most South Carolina thing to ever happen. If Chad Holbrook, former Gamecock head coach Chad Holbrook, somehow ended South Carolina's season in regional play, that I think, I don't even know. Like, Columbia might be set on fire at that point. But, Yeah, it's a tougher regional. I think South Carolina could find some success in it with Charleston in there. Penn's also a pretty good team. I remember the Gamecocks played them last year in non-conference play, and that was a tough series because Penn's a good team. That's a good mid-major right there, and it'd be tough. But I think also I think I like that. But I think I would prefer to see South Carolina go to like the Raleigh regional or something. I've seen that thrown around, and wherever they go, I'll be there. But it's going to be tough, I think, either way, especially with where the pitching is at. But we'll see what happens.
He's already set the SEC tournament record. How many RBIs can Cole Messina wrap up the weekend with?
If today's his last game, I'm going to go out on a limb and say he gets 3 more today. I think he's got one more homer in him. And I think it'll be like a 2-run shot, and then he hits a big RBI single to help South Carolina potentially win today. We'll have to see, but I do think he's had an incredible run. The fact that he was named All SEC second team is astonishing. It's astonishing, but that's just my opinion.
Also, dirtiest uniform I think I've ever seen last night from him.
So yeah, my brother was watching the game last night. He doesn't really watch Carolina games. He texted me last night. He's like, "This dude's uniform is so dirty." I'm like, that's who he is. That's who he is, and he's the heart and soul of this team. And South Carolina is nowhere in this position without him. So,
well, for anybody out there that did not know Cole Messina's name going into this week, I think there's no doubt that they know his name now. And again, he's the catalyst for so much of the offensive success this team's had, and hopefully that continues today against Kentucky at 4:00.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see what happens. It's gonna be a tough one. It really does come down to South Carolina's pitching. If they can piece it together today and you get enough run support, you have a chance to win this game. But if not, it's not the end of the world. You just move on. You get the rest of the week off until next week, and then you go from there and reset and try to formulate a better plan with how you're going to use your pitching, I think.
Well, Jack, we don't have any shows tomorrow, Sunday, or Monday, so we have to wait until Tuesday to talk to you again. So we'll get the lay of the land after the tournament and see where we stand for the NCAA tournament coming up. So enjoy the rest of the weekend, and hopefully we're talking about more wins come next week.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you guys so much.
Again, Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central out there in Hoover, and again, first pitch against Kentucky coming up at 4:00 today. Pre-game coverage starting at 3:45 right here on the game. Come back with more. I think our guy Larry might jump in with us in this next segment here, live out of Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive, going until noon here on the game.
Couple months now. Our friends over at Classic Roofing offering residential and commercial roofing services throughout Columbia, South Carolina area and beyond. Give my friends Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer a call, or just head on over to classicroofingsc.com. If you prefer to call them, it's 803-590-7870. Or if you go to that website, classicroofingsc.com, you're going to get more information about their services, and you can help set up a free estimate for your roof. They've got a wealth of experience spanning more than 20 years. Their team of experts is well equipped to handle all of your roofing requirements. That could be a residential project, a commercial undertaking, or really anything in between that. They have got you covered. The mission is simple: provide you with top-notch roofing solutions that will not only protect your property, but also enhance its curb appeal. Again, that is our friends over at Classic Roofing. Call them today for your roofing needs, 803-590-7870, or hit up classicroofingsc.com.
91 and 11. Vanderbilt was in going into the week.
Okay, got it.
I was looking at projections earlier. I didn't take the total count, but I think they're still at 10. Let me see. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrod West Mitchell, Chris Clark, along with you out at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. Again, going up until noon. Had a great time out here as we always have. Been eating sandwiches, giving away tickets, giving away T-shirts, the whole 9 yards. And our guy Larry Chandler, owner of all the Firehouse Subs around the Columbia area, hanging out with us. Once again, Larry, appreciate your time. Thank you for having us out here as always. How have you been enjoying the tournament this week?
Good. It's been exciting, especially getting some wins and exciting game, long game last night. Didn't think it was going to end, but it's good. Good to see us kind of break that losing streak. So good, enjoying it. It's been some really good games too.
So you made it all the way through. I was struggling a little bit, to be honest. That was one of the. I mean, it's a great game,
yeah,
but that was a long game. Just a heartbreaker though for it to end the way it did, Larry.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed. I'm sure, especially team, I'm sure is really disappointed, but just a back and forth game. And we had every chance to win the game. Baseball is a funny game, bounce here, bounce there. And all of a sudden momentum changes and runs are scored. And unfortunately it was on the other side that the runs were scored. So
well, I think it's worth noting. And look, LSU, they haven't had the season they wanted to. Of course, after winning the national championship, there was going to be a drop off this year, but there's no denying they're playing their best baseball right now. Ran through Georgia, run rolled Kentucky the other day. And so to give them a one-run game yesterday, that is worth something. Now, yes, if you go back and fix a couple things, you win that game. We're talking about having today off and playing in the semifinals tomorrow, but still something to be said about how hard you played a team like that in a wild 4-hour game that you had yesterday.
Yeah, I think, when you're in a tournament and you see all those teams, it reminds you how great this conference is and how much talent that's truly in this conference. And all these teams are really great. So, I think it gives you a good perspective instead of just seeing a weekend at a time. But you start watching all these games and you realize how great they are. So
I think that's a great point, Larry. You start to look like, we know about Jack Caglione, we know about obviously Condon at Georgia, but then you look at what Messina's doing for South Carolina. You look at what do they call him? Tommy Tanks.
Tanks, yeah.
For LSU. I mean, this guy, they popped up the graphic and it's like he's got easily 20 plus home runs all 3 years he's played. The last 3 seasons, started out at NC State, and just almost every team has a guy who is like their guy and their dude. And obviously here at Carolina, I think it's Messina and Petrie, obviously. But this league, I mean, the top teams coming in, they all got sent to the losers bracket because the teams who really needed some momentum and probably felt a little bit of that pressure coming in to win some games have stepped up and gone out and won it. I can't help but think, what if Carolina could have held on and won last night and then had today off? But even then, I do think you've at least found quite a bit of momentum compared to, I mean, I'm sure you're talking to your Gamecock buddies. I'm talking to my Gamecock buddies. 6 straight losses before that. There is a lot of just down in the dumps fans, I think.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I think just winning 2 games and hopefully we'll win today and maybe who knows what'll happen over the weekend. But I think that changed the perspective going into regional. And, like I said, baseball is one of the most interesting sports to me because, I mean, we know being Braves fans for all these years, the best team doesn't always win. It's about getting momentum. I think this time of the year, you look at us, or especially LSU now and Vanderbilt, they're getting all this momentum going into regionals. Who knows what they're going to do? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all ends this week and how it goes into regionals.
You've gotten to witness a lot of great Gamecocks over the years. Is Cole Messina maybe anywhere in your top 5 of all-time greats?
Oh, my God. Every time he comes up now, I'm thinking he's going to do something amazing. I think he pretty much put this team on his shoulders the last 3 days, and he's just carried him. My goodness. Every time he comes up, right, you think he's going to do something amazing.
Especially if Blake Jackson gets on base right before him.
That's true. But I think he's an amazing player. I tell you, he's just I think he's just heart and soul of the team. So without a doubt. So
if you hit Blake Jackson, you might as well just walk. Walk Messina the next time, because that's
true.
a bad omen for you if you're an opponent.
That might be Kentucky's MO today. Just put him on base. I don't care
Probably,
what the situation is. You're not going to let him beat you by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we played Kentucky really well here. So hopefully that'll carry over to be interesting to see who we're pitching and who they're pitching. So
Kentucky, by the way, it seems like I've said this sentence 10 times this year. Kentucky, now the number one team in the RPI. So we were talking about how off air, how all the numbers kind of get differentiated and they bounce around and stuff. Vanderbilt, I'm looking at this live RPI right now. Vanderbilt has now, who South Carolina has a sweep over. They've jumped all the way to 17 in the country in the RPI. They're up 10 spots based on this run. And so they go from 27. They have a higher RPI than South Carolina right now. But all these teams are just mashed together. LSU's up to 24. Even Florida, who feels like an afterthought this year, is 29 in the RPI. And but for South Carolina today, another opportunity facing number one Kentucky, like y'all said, played them well earlier this year. And I wanted to get your thought as a lifelong fan. What do you think about the D1 baseball projections that South Carolina could be going to Clemson Regional, South Carolina 2 seed, Charleston 3 seed with Chad Holbrook? Think about the storylines there.
I think that would be awesome. Number one, I forgot about the Charleston possibility, but that's another storyline, right? But yeah, for us to get a chance to go to Clemson, I think for us, it'd be a great opportunity for us to get a little revenge from the first 2 games during the season. And I think the pressures really would be on them for sure, not us. And just go out there and play ball. But yeah, to get all 3 of those teams in there, especially with Holbrook, my goodness, that would be quite an interesting thing. I definitely think they should do that.
Now, do you share the same fear that a lot of Gamecock fans share, where you see something like that and think it's automatically going to go the wrong way, like Braswell being the catalyst to them winning last night?
Yeah, I did have that feeling when he came up. It's like, maybe we all did. Maybe that's why he got the hit, because we were already projecting that thing. We were already calling it. But I don't know. I think it will be an interesting story, but you wouldn't want that to happen, right?
Sure.
But I think it'd be good publicity for us for that to happen. So.
Think about poor Penn. They're the 4 seed, at least projected in there.
Right.
No, I mean, I know the 4 seed doesn't get a lot of attention anyway, but you are a complete afterthought if you're in that scenario. But Larry, I looked at it like this. A lot of fans, rightfully so, at many times this year, have been upset about this season most of the year anyway. So I look at it like if you're going to Clemson, and also throw in the Chad Holbrook potential matching up with them as well, you either have a clear just double down on this was an unsuccessful season if you lose,
right?
Or you have a chance to etch yet another great memory in postseason play of this rivalry. And no matter what's happened to this point this season, as a Gamecock fan, you'd be able to say, we went to Clemson and sent them home. So to me, I'm with you. The pressure would be on Clemson. Like, I think this is nothing but a good thing for South Carolina, because it gives you that opportunity to go right up there against your rival and against a team that beat you by 1 run in both games. This is not an unbeatable Clemson team.
Right. No, I think it's exciting. That's what when I saw that projection, I was like, well, this is going to be great. Be perfect for us. But I say perfect for us now. Hoping I'm not saying that and jinx us. We know that happens. But yeah, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great for the fans of South Carolina, and I think it'd be packed out for sure. But if you add Charleston to the scenario, so be great.
Well, Larry, before we let you go, I got to say I tried the barbecue Cuban this time. Fantastic. I'm not even a coleslaw guy. Adds a nice crunch. The spicy pickle on the bottom there. 10 out of 10.
Wow. Well, I heard you say you've been accused of having it before, but
the last time we went out there, I had to leave early, and apparently it got 8, and the blame got put on me. I didn't get to try it.
Oh man,
I was wrongly accused.
It's a great limited time offer we have. We got a little bit more time for everybody to try it. It's a great sub, and I enjoyed. I had one last week, and it's a really nice taste, great flavor profile, and gets your taste buds going for sure. So
if you haven't tried it, highly recommend it. We've been chowing down on subs all morning long, and always appreciate when you allow us to come out here, because we have a great time.
Well, I can't thank y'all enough. Y'all are awesome. We'll appreciate y'all so much too. So thank you.
Absolutely. Again, Larry Chandler, owner of the Firehouse Subs here in the Columbia area. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs out here on Forest Drive going until noon here on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrod West Mitchell. Chris is missing in action at the moment. I'm assuming he went to the bathroom.
He's here somewhere.
He's
Don't
here
call him
somewhere.
out. He's here somewhere. He's here somewhere. Probably eating some more
Yeah.
subs, if you ask me.
Probably
But,
so. Well, I've gotten 2 down. You've got 3, 4. I mean, you haven't even
I mean,
had so
not
far.
full subs, Tyler. We're
Well,
talking about cuts,
the
sections.
the fourth of a full sub, I guess. Is
Yeah,
the
so
best
I'm
way to
at
put it.
I'm at one
You're
full
one
sub.
full sub. Okay.
Yeah, the perfect amount. Yeah, you still got time to come see us, but you're running out of time. But you can still get lunch after we leave. What do you want to talk about for these final 5 minutes, Tyler?
Well, we're now, I mean, the hay's in the barn as far as baseball. We've got, what, a little over 4 hours until first pitch. We still don't know the exact
They do have a
pitching
big
matchup.
decision to make.
They do have a decision to make. We don't know the pitching matchup yet against Kentucky. And again, this is a team that, obviously Kentucky's gotten this far in the tournament so far, so they are maybe taking it more seriously than some of these other teams, but they're a team that's projected to host. They're going to be in position to host Super Regional if they win that. Like I said, they're number one in the RPI right now. This is a great team that, again, a month ago, you were able to take care of in 2 out of 3 games, including a 10-run rule game. So, you feel like South Carolina's got a good chance in this one. Number one thing, limit the mistakes today, because that's what killed you yesterday. And hopefully we're talking about this team in the semifinals tomorrow.
Yeah, to give credit where it's due, this is a beautiful resume for Kentucky. 21-8, quad 1.
I think they have the most quad 1 wins out of everyone, right?
Looks like it. Yeah, 7-2, quad 2, 5-2, quad 3, 7-1, quad 4. What quad 4 team beat them? Anyway, doesn't matter.
Hang a banner.
I know, like they've been very impressive. Number 6 strength of schedule. So you're going to face a great opponent today, but you would be no matter who you're playing. I think the real key and the thing we can't project right now, who's Kentucky throw? Like that's really when you look at these games and how they play out, every team is trying hard. Like the guys that are on the field, they care too much not to try. To me, really, it kind of comes down to pitching decisions. And do you force it with your pitchers, or do you play a little bit more like in preparation for next week? Which if you're Kentucky, if you're like a Texas A&M, a Tennessee, if you're Arkansas, you don't burn through your big time arms. But I'll be curious to see who does Kentucky throw out there, even if it's one of their top arms, but you're just saying, hey, treat it like a bullpen. Go give us 3 innings, 4 innings today.
Yeah, I mean, another bullpen game for South Carolina. And, some of the guys that we have been talking about all day today since we've been out here at Firehouse Subs, could factor in today. And, you look at SQ, for example. You look at that third game of the Kentucky series where South Carolina had gotten the bats hot. They put up 10 runs, probably would have been on their way to putting up more if not for the game ending early due to a run rule, and held down a Kentucky offense that had been red hot and is still a very good offense. They hadn't been shut out all year, and South Carolina did that. And nobody really expected that, for South Carolina. I think it looks like the formula going into this game is Kentucky's probably going to score some runs, right? They're also, you kind of take that to the next level, because if you're South Carolina, you're not throwing quote unquote your best guys, although that has kind of gone back and forth all season, right? You haven't really had that dominant guy compared to like last season where you had a really more of a set rotation. These are your guys. It's been a little bit more mix and match this year. So the formula looks like you're going to have to put up some runs, and you're going to have to avoid the type of mistakes that plagued you yesterday against LSU. That said, you never really know what type of pitching performance you may get.
And looking at the numbers from the last time they played Kentucky in that 3-game set, you had some guys like Kennedy Jones went 5-11 in that series, 8 RBIs and 1 home run. Blake Jackson, went 4 of 11 with 6 RBIs himself. Messina got 4 RBIs. You had a lot of production up and down the lineup against that Kentucky team a couple weeks back, which again, you're probably going to need to score a lot of runs to beat this team today. Again, regardless of who they're going to throw out there on the mound, but again, a good record for South Carolina against them just a little over a month ago that hopefully proves true today as well.
Wait, I think Tyler's been holding out on it. Is this a Colin Taylor style document of all the
you guys haven't seen
pitching?
This? No,
wow.
This is everything. This is batting stats for every weekend of whatever pitcher does. This is what I do every weekend.
Oh wow.
Did you know this?
I had no idea.
I do this for all the sports.
Did you do this before you met Colin, or did he
turn you on? Colin has influenced me on doing this. I've always had something like this, but Colin's definitely helped me refine it a little bit. I'll say that much.
I think Colin made it. He's still out there doing spreadsheets.
No, he's missing.
He's
missing the SEC.
Funny thing, Colin still does make spreadsheets, and he'll send me them randomly. I call him the spreadsheet fairy. He'll be like, "Hey, spreadsheet fairy's got one for you. Check your inbox." And
that is amazing.
Why he still makes them, I don't know. It's not turned into his job, but I'm thankful for it.
Can you scroll down to the tournament so far?
Yeah.
Do you have that?
Absolutely.
This is amazing.
So how many did SQ throw earlier this week? Just a reminder.
Let's see here.
I know it wasn't a ton. Do you have the pitch count too?
I don't have the
innings?
pinch count on this one, but I can get you that in just
That's
a
okay.
second.
So he just threw an inning and a third.
Yeah, he didn't go very far into that game, so you got a
I
relatively
think that
fresh arm.
fits. I think that fits him. Like I really do. So I'll push back on Jack a little bit. I think this is your scenario. Like this is your blueprint. Now, if you start getting deeper into, you lose a game, you have to play an extra game in a regional. Yeah, you're gonna. I mean, they had Michael Polk having to throw yesterday. He's not been a high leverage guy for you, so you're going to at times need somebody to step up who has not pitched a ton in high leverage situations. But if it helps you potentially put yourself in a situation where you can keep winning, then I think that's what you have to do.
Yeah, he threw 28 pitches, so he's good for the day.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Yeah, you're going to need some guys to step up.
Well, hopefully they do, and hopefully come Tuesday, won't have a show on Monday because Memorial Day. Hopefully on Tuesday we're at least talking about maybe a couple more wins, and who knows, maybe a trophy from the SEC tournament looking ahead to the NCAAs. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Thank you to Larry Chandler and everyone here at Firehouse Subs on Forest Drive. Halftime show with myself and Terry Ford coming up next right here on The Game.
Gift for that special graduate in your life, look no further than our friends over at Goal Line Framing in West Columbia. And right now, I got a little tidbit for you. I hear they have a special on framed diplomas, so you're going to want to call them. They're extending that out, I believe, into next month. But call them, get the details.